Welcome to Bollywood to Hollywood with Rampilla. Today we have a special guest, a filmmaker by name Julie Bridgham. We met at the Woodstock Film Festival. She had a film she showed there regarding the Nepalese women. Julie.
Yes. Hi, Rao. Thank you so
Welcome
much.
to the show.
Thank you.
So tell me, you have been a filmmaker, right?
Yes.
How many years ago did you start?
Oh, gosh, I began probably around 17 years ago now. So I've been doing documentary for quite some time.
And most of your documentaries are from Nepal.
I've actually done things that are for both television as well as documentary features and short films. But I lived in Nepal for about 7 years, and so I've done quite a few films in that area.
And you are an award-winning filmmaker. You have your Sundance Institute documentary fellowship you have.
Yes.
And you also have a Nestor Almond Rose Prize for Human Rights Fellowship. So quite an accomplishment.
Oh, thank you.
My question is, why Nepal out of all the places in the world?
Right. So it's so interesting, Ro. I first became exposed to Nepal a long time ago, back when I was 6 years old, actually. And my elementary school principal had been in the Peace Corps in Nepal back in the 60s. And I remember she would tell us as students, as elementary school students.
Where was that?
This was in Palo Alto, California.
Oh, I see.
She would tell us about Nepal and show us slides, and I was just fascinated. I was really, really intrigued, and she had a friend of hers from Nepal that would come and visit us, and he was this wonderful man, and it just got planted in my head that I had this fascination with Nepal at an early age.
Is it because of the Everest, or is it because of the
it was because
religion?
No, I think it was really, I have to really credit my elementary school principal, Barbara Butterworth. She really exposed us to such a deeper level of the country, which was really about the culture and about a world that was so different from what I knew in growing up in Palo Alto back in the 70s and 80s. And I think it was really through that we got a much better perspective as students about a world that was so different, and that planted the seed for me. And when I first went to Nepal in the 90s, I fell in love with it. I met some extraordinary people, and I knew I wanted to find an opportunity to come back whenever I could.
So what made you to go to Nepal in 90s?
It was an opportunity that I had. I was in college at the time, and had a chance to travel there on my own. It was just one of these things where, again, I just had this idea from when I was so young that I had wanted to go there, and the opportunity finally came that I had the time and the chance to go, and so I went on my own at 20, and just fell in love. And I first went there as a trekker, and then came back many years later to do several films for an organization.
Then you made your first film.
Well, I made my first documentary feature many years later. So I first came back to Nepal in 2000, and I did 2 films for an organization called the Nepal Youth Foundation. And that really was what gave me a chance to start spending more time in the country. And one opportunity led to another, and I began doing work for the UN. I did several films for them, for the World Food Program, and I did another film looking at traders that were on the border between Nepal and Tibet. And then several years later is when I began filming the Sari soldiers, and that was the documentary feature that I did for the Nestor. Right.
Can we see the trailer for the Sari soldiers? It's interesting you call Sari soldiers.
Yes. Well, the Sari soldiers, the name came about because these were women that were both civilian women. That the sari is a very kind of iconic dress from South Asia,
and that's Indian and as well as Hindu.
Exactly. Right.
I think we have a trailer for Sari soldiers. Can we see the yes?
आर्मीकै साथमा छ
उनीहरूले जहिलेसम्म यो जवाफ दिँदैन त्यसलेसम्म म भन्न त छोड्दिनँ
We have to speak, and speaking about justice is not a crime.
स्थानीय निकाय छैन पार्लियामेन्ट छैन हैन जनप्रतिनिधिमूलक शासन छैन हैन जनताको पावर भने त सडकमा नै हुन्छ
पुरानो सत्ताले अब यहाँको नेपाली जनतालाई शोषण दमन उत्पीडन गरिराखेको हो त्यसपछि विशेषतः अझ महिलाहरू अन्त्य गर्नको लागि बन्दुक उठाउनु पर्ने
मलाई
हामी त डर
मान्दैनौँ
कहिलेकाहीँ म आफै पनि अब भन्न कहिलेकाहीँ यसो टाइम यसो त्यस अरू कुनै मेन्टली प्रेसर नभए भने म आफै सोच्छु कि म कस्तो ट्रेनिङ गरिरहेको छु कसैलाई मार्ने ट्रेनिङ गरिरहेको छु यो त छुट्टै कुरा होइन
हामी पटक पटक प्रजातन्त्र ल्याउने खोसाउनु त्योसँग सम्झौता गर्ने कुरा भएन
That's Sari Soldiers. It's interesting you gave the title Sari Soldiers.
Yes.
But I don't see them fighting in saris, but they're wearing the...
Well, yeah. I mean, the film actually follows 6 women. So 4 of the women are civilian. And the Sari really is representative of the civilian woman that's from South Asia. And in fact, actually throughout the film, you will see several of the characters that are, of course, dressed in the very traditional dress. But as you know, throughout...
And this was shown all over the world?
Yeah, it's been shown in over 50 countries. And it's been shown throughout Nepal. That was actually something that was really rewarding for us, was to be able to have this film be shown in areas where people had actually experienced the conflict. So the film, just to kind of backtrack, and in particular because I'm not sure if there's volume for this trailer, but the film follows 6 women who are on opposing sides of Nepal's civil war. And so one of the women is Kranti, who is one of the top Maoist commanders for the Maoist army.
Is she the Dalit woman?
No. So Kranti, what was interesting in how the whole film began, and the original inception and the idea behind it, was because when I was in really rural parts of Nepal doing these films for the UN, I saw the Maoist movement really taking hold. And one of the things that really intrigued me was, why was it that so many women were now getting involved as Maoist soldiers? And the Maoists had claimed that up to 40% of their soldiers are women. And it's a figure that can be disputed. It's not like an official number. But nonetheless, it was something that really fascinated me, that why in such a patriarchal society are so many women now arming themselves and taking up this role? And so that intrigued me, and I knew I wanted to find out more about why women were really captivated to join the movement. So we began filming Kranti, but then on the flip side, the Royal Nepal Army was also drafting its first batch of female officers, which also really intrigued me. Why is it that women are now going into the Nepal Army? And so at first it was just to look at these two, kind of the military perspectives of this conflict. But what I realized is that not only in the case of Nepal, but in conflicts around the world, it's really civilians that are at the front lines of these conflicts. And there are many different sides. There's never just 2 sides to a story. And so the more that the story began to unfold, I realized that it needed to be told through very different perspectives and having different characters that represented those different points of view. And so one of the women is Devi, who is from the lowest caste, the Dalit caste. And Krishna, her daughter, who is 15-year-old Maina Sunwar, was abducted by the Royal Nepal Army. And her daughter's case inevitably wound up becoming the landmark case in Nepal. And Nepal at that time, this was back in 2005 and 2006, had the largest number of reported disappearances in the world, which was really extraordinary. So we follow her case and Devi's search for justice, and it's really remarkable. I mean, the woman was so tenacious and really fearless in really trying to get justice. And her efforts wound up paving the way for so many other Nepali families to try and get justice. And it's really through her story, too, that we see the real personal toll and the cost of this conflict. And again, this is something that's relatable not just to Nepal, but to individuals around the world that are caught, in the midst of this. Another woman that was featured is Mandira Sharma, who is a human rights lawyer, and she was really at the forefront of taking on many of these cases. Another woman was Krishna Shah, who led the first civilian-led uprising against the Maoists. And Krishna was a monarchist, so she comes from a very different perspective than many of the other women. And then last but not least was Ram Kumari, who's a student political activist. And she was a part of a small group of younger political activists that were out there on the streets, even when there was a state of emergency and it was banned for people to actually get out there and protest. And they would get out there and they would, you could see this kind of cat and mouse game between the protesters and the police, and seeing like, okay, well, what's going to happen when these protests begin, and, how long is it going to take before people start getting arrested? But it's through Ram Kumari's story that we really see this pursuit for democracy and how it started from a small, kind of dedicated, passionate group of young people that ultimately wound up spreading to millions of people getting out on the streets and reclaiming democracy for the country.
Well, now they have the democratic government.
They do, yes.
They overthrew the monarchy.
Right.
But are you saying it's the woman who led this whole struggle?
No, not at all. In fact, what's interesting, though, is that so often, and you can probably relate to this as well, I feel that women's stories often don't wind up getting publicly acknowledged. And what's interesting to me, having lived in Nepal for many years, these women are not actually anomalies of the culture. They are all very, very strong women. But all too often, because women aren't unfortunately represented in official positions of power, whether it's in politics or in business, their efforts and their the impact that they have on society oftentimes goes unacknowledged publicly. And that's where it was really important to me that I wanted the protagonists that we focused on to be the women's stories, because indeed it's not that it was only women that shaped the country, it's women and men and people from all different sectors of society, but that all too often the role that women play is not actually getting acknowledged, and it was very, very significant actually with their efforts.
But do you think because of the Maoist organization there, that women got liberated and participated in the struggle rather than any other struggle in the Western Hemisphere, even though they are supposed to have been liberated?
Right.
I mean, there is a chain of thought in India. Maybe the caste system will wither away through a revolutionary struggle,
right,
like one they have faced,
right,
because there will be more participation from everyone equally, and they forget about the caste. Likewise, the gender differences.
Right. And
so this may be an example. I don't know for sure.
Right.
I don't know what you think.
Well, I think it's interesting. I think what the Maoists, what the agenda wound up presenting was really important. I mean, that it raised issues kind of nationwide about gender issues and about the caste system, about these inequalities, and things that really did need to be discussed. These were things that had been simmering for a long time, these inequalities. What one can argue about is, of course, the means of how that was done. But I think as far as the issue, it was really important. And I think the Maoists can perhaps have some credit for it, but I don't think that they deserve all of that credit. I mean, when you look at many of the women that are featured, for example, in the Sari soldiers, women like Devi Sunwar, she was somebody that became a real figure because she never set out to actually become kind of this heroic individual that was going to be making a difference for families of the disappeared. but it was really through the circumstance of what happened to her and with her daughter. And it she was somebody that said, I cannot sit back and tolerate this injustice. And I think that's where it's very interesting, and it's so important to have women's voices told, because, again, many of these women, they were mothers, ultimately, that were just fed up with seeing what was happening to their children and said, we can't tolerate this. And I think those are voices that need to be told, and the real heroism, actually, of what these women are doing and putting themselves at risk, saying, I didn't sign up to join a movement, to get out there on the streets, or to join a rebel group, or an army. I'm just a mom from this community that cares about these kids.
Well, what is curious, probably for the audience point of view, how did you get access into this intricate political battle?
Sure. So it was interesting, when I began filming, it was right after there was a state of emergency. And so at that time in Nepal, it was very difficult for people to even discuss things politically, like out in the open. But the first person I began following was Devi Sunwar's story, the mother of the girl who was disappeared. And she was introduced to me through kind of a mutual friend that had met her, had heard her story, and said, this is really remarkable what this woman is doing, what she's facing, and her courage really to tell the story. And when I began filming Devi and following her story, it was really one of those stories that we had no idea what was going to happen. And I really thought, I don't know if she's ever going to find her daughter. Who knows what kind of justice will be done? And it was amazing to be following that journey. But as far as with the other women, many of these women kind of came about because of their positions and their courage to be out there in the kind of public specter. And as far as like with both the Maoists and the army, I think is really through discussions that we had with both groups that we were able to get access.
Now, switching the gears.
Yes.
So you went and spent another 7 years filming another movie, Drawing the Tiger.
Yes, so Drawing the Tiger is another...
But it's also a female issue.
Yeah, well, so Drawing the Tiger, I'll just clarify, I actually am not the filmmaker, so I'm the executive producer for Drawing the Tiger. The two filmmakers, the two directors, are Amy Benson and Scott Squire. They are a husband and wife directing team from Seattle. And they followed the story of the Darnall family. It's their family that's profiled in Drawing the Tiger. They met the Darnalls actually through work that they were doing with an organization that was sponsoring girls to get educated. And that's how they began filming. And then they realized actually through that filming process that there was a much greater story to be uncovered through spending time with the Darnalls. And so they filmed this family's journey actually over a 7-year period of time.
Like the Boyhood.
Almost like, right. It is, in some ways it's like that, right, where you kind of see this whole process that unfolds for this family. And what is amazing about the film Drawing the Tiger is to have this very, very intimate look at the journey and struggles that this Nepali family faces. And I like to say, the Drawing the Tiger is a very character-driven story. It's a story where you really do get to know each of the family members very well, and it's a film entirely told through their perspective and through their life.
Well, let's see the trailer,
Okay.
and then we can
Sure.
talk a little more.
Absolutely.
Let's have the trailer for Drawing the Tiger.
जसले छेको जस्तै जे गरोस् कुनै कथामा आउँछ तँलाई बिहेमा ब्यागले खानु भनेर अब बिहेमा त आर्मी राखेर टनाटन राखेपछि त ब्याग आउने कुरै भएन अनि केटाकेटी ब्याग भन्ने कस्तो हुन्छ भनेपछि चित्र बनाइदिएको ब्याग यस्तो हुन्छ चित्र त्यो कोरेको चित्रले खान माने न त्यही त्यसकै बाग बन्ने लेखेको मेटिँदैन त्यस्तो
So here is Santi, the girl, right? And living in very bad economic conditions, basically poverty. And I recall some of those incidents living in India.
Right.
So these two filmmakers went there and they followed her story.
Right.
And she got help to go and study in Kathmandu.
Right.
But she died eventually. Why?
Well, I don't want to give away the film, so
Okay. So
without giving away,
yeah. So
without kind of giving away everything in the
but
film.
it follows her
right.
and the family.
It does. It does, and it really the film is, as I was saying before, it's a real intimate look at actually the challenges that this family faces, thinking that there is going to be this phenomenal opportunity for their daughter getting this scholarship to go to boarding school in Kathmandu. And so Shanta goes to Kathmandu to study. She lives with her brother and her sister-in-law and their family, but winds up facing quite a few challenges along the course. And the film really, without kind of, again, going into the details of all of it, because I hope people go to see it, but it really shows the complexities behind this kind of support, and that there are many, many factors that actually determine kind of what success can look like and how to be able to promote that type of success, particularly in a place as complex as Nepal, where there's, oftentimes a lot of challenges for young girls in particular.
She comes from a Dalit family.
Yes, she does. Right.
And as I recall, the majority of the population in Nepal are Hindus.
Right.
So Dalits are still much more oppressed than the other communities.
Right.
And for a Dalit girl
yes.
to be able to go to Kathmandu
right.
and study, it's a really a great task.
Yeah.
So again, you're following a different kind of rebellion from the female perspective,
right.
to be educated and to be able to reach the outer limits of or reach the sky.
Yes, right.
For them, going to school is like reaching the sky.
Right, right.
So what has driven you into this, your filmmakers, into this story, vis-a-vis the other story where it was a mass rebellion with 4 or 5 different categories of women. But here is one family, poor family, and one girl. Right. And they're trying to somehow support her. Yes. And she got some external help. Right. So what brought this whole, the focus had changed.
The focus has changed, yes. Well, as I mentioned, so the filmmakers, Scott Squire and Amy Benson, who did Drawing the Tiger, they really had the vision of telling this story very intimately through one family, and believed that through getting to know the characters of this family, each individual very well, and their personal struggles, that you really could build empathy and real understanding of the complexities that this family faces. And one of the things that I think is so beautiful in that film, in Drawing the Tiger, that the filmmakers did so well, is capturing just so much of the kind of nuance of day-to-day life and day-to-day struggle in a village, a hillside village in Nepal, which I think is just incredible to have that feeling where you can just feel like you are immersed in that family's life and really understand what does that mean to have a day-to-day challenge and struggle like they face, and what does that mean to really have this opportunity that their daughter is presented with, to now get educated. But when you go from the contrast of the village life to seeing where Shanta's living in this kind of small one-room apartment in Kathmandu amidst all the hustle and bustle, you know, it is quite isolating too. And that's also something too that I think is illustrated so well within the film, is seeing the real contrast of kind of community that in support that people can get in the village versus, you know, a lot of the loneliness that one can feel too, you know, being in the big city. And so there is the payoff and opportunity in each circumstance. But getting back to girls' education, this is a very, very important issue within Nepal in particular. And there is still a very, very significant percentage of girls in Nepal that are not educated even above second grade. And Shanta is really kind of the first in her family to get that opportunity as a girl. And so that is a very, very important step. And particularly in rural communities, you find that it's a much smaller.
Well, we have to wrap it up soon. But
yes.
It brought back some memories for me from India,
Right.
rural areas. And then also it's a beautiful portrayal of cinematography of the Nepal and the beautiful scenarios, even though it is sad to see the situation. But well, I guess I think this is going to play in the next film festival here.
Yes. So for people that are watching this now, the film Drawing the Tiger is going to be having its New York City premiere coming up on October 25th. So that's very soon. It's going to be at the Margaret Mead Film Festival. That's at the Museum of Natural History at 1:30 p.m. And the directors will be there. They're coming in from Seattle, and so they will be there for Q&A. I will be there. And it would be wonderful if people get the chance to come see it. It's a really beautiful, important film.
Well, there are a lot of issues. I wish we had more time to talk about it. But it is what it is. Well, if anyone wants to see the film, Sunday, October 25th, 1:30 p.m.
Yes.
So, hey, there you are. Everybody go and see the film and find the solutions that are not discussed here. Some of the secrets. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for coming on to my show, Bollywood to Hollywood. Hope to see you soon.
I would love that, yes.
Well, until the next time, Bollywood to Hollywood, turning off. Everybody go see the film. It's a wonderful film. If you are interested in female issues, especially in Nepal, this is the place and time. Next Sunday, October 25th, 1:30